Welcome, viewers, to this new episode of BeyondPhrenology. We have Dr. Daniel Plate from Linwood University in the US talking with us about AI, especially the disclosures regarding AI in scientific publishing, publishing in academics in general, writing books, and for all sorts of literary purposes, as well as the general involvement of very rapidly kind of propagating AI technology within the academia, and what are the consequences of the current policies or the lack of policies regarding AI would have in how we educate, the new generation of scholars, and what academia will look like going forward. So, Dan, welcome to Beyond Phrenology.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here, Madhur. This is my background is very interdisciplinary. So I come out of creative writing. I come out of some philosophy as an undergraduate. I have a degree in a Master's of Fine Arts in poetry, which is very much an applied literary degree. And then I also have my PhD from WashU in St. Louis in American literature. But when I was doing the PhD, I was focusing on philosophy of science, theories of rhetoric. So how do we interpret literature in a very applied way? How is literature used out in the world? And so since I've been at Lindenwood since 2004, I continue to go back and forth between very applied work, like how do we teach students, freshman students, composition, research skills, and then literary theory, and then increasingly creative writing over the years. And then over the last few years, I've started doing applied AI. I teach some applied AI courses at Lindenwood now. Alongside that, I've also been involved at Lindenwood in policy discussions, like what should our policies at Lindenwood be? The book that my co-author, Dr. James Hudson, and I published is not a formal Lindenwood policy. It's
Mhm.
our own idea, kind of theories of how we should approach policy when it comes to AI. And our position is that we should flip the default. So I think now when we have discussions of AI, there's a default that disclosing the use of AI should just be understood. Whenever you do work for publishing, creative content, art, anything, you should disclose that you're using AI as a default, unless maybe we have reasons to not disclose. Our position is that that should be reversed, that the default should be no transparency about methods. How you create something should be entirely owned by the creator. We increasingly think it's a labor issue as well. That when you do work, the way you do your work is owned by you. The methods that you use to produce something, if you've
Mhm.
developed methods that are really productive, you own those. And if the audience or the employer wants transparency, to us, that's actually infringing on the labor rights of the worker or the person who's creating articles or creating novels, whatever it be. And so we're very much against these policies or publisher guidelines that say you need to disclose the use of AI because we think it infringes on creative ownership.
Mhm.
So that's general in a nutshell. We would like to reverse that default. It's a very steep hill to climb because we know very, very few people who are arguing that no disclosure is a good idea.
So, I mean, there's a lot to unpack there. So, let's start with what's the motivation of these policies? So we never had any disclosure policy for any other technology we used for writing, for
Yep.
publishing, for scientific instrumentation. It's the first time we have policies, and I submit journal articles, uh, policies which are applied in a very absurd manner right now. So, could you talk a little about motivation? Why are academics so kind of hooked on uh, disclosures and AI
Yeah.
usage?
I come from multiple perspectives on this.
Mhm.
So because I teach creative writing, what I'm experiencing with students, creative writing students, is that they're very resistant to using AI for creative work. And they want complete disclosure or maybe just like complete a ban on use of AI for creative work because for them it's often an ethical issue. They think the companies have been scraping art, scraping creative text, and that's theft. It's theft by the owner, by the OpenAI or Anthropic, taking that. And so for them, that's I think where the resistance to no disclosure would come from. On the academic side, I think it's gatekeeping. I
Hmm.
think that we know, like in November of 22, when ChatGPT first landed, I teach freshman composition
Yeah.
as a routine matter. Instantly, when we could see that students could write papers with AI, it becomes existential. Like what do we do at that point
Yeah.
when students can create in a few minutes something that you might take weeks to teach them how to do? And right then, I think it was just a kind of panic, which is we need to just stop this from happening until we figure out how to restructure
Hmm.
education. There were all these discussions about blue books. Do we need to have students just in the classroom writing everything by hand from now on? Um, so I think that's my understanding still is that a lot of the resistance to no disclosure would be how do we maintain some kind of control over the educational context?
Hmm.
Um,
So, before we move further with this, just to answer some of the skeptics, you said that, AI could write a paper which students took, days to write or weeks to write, probably. Uh, so I do some provocative posts about AI on LinkedIn, especially lately, given. So I did a post that how PhD thesis is becoming obsolete very fast.
I
And I
read
got a
it.
lot of pushback. There's a whole group came behind me. In fact, people were tagging my university to cancel me. Why are they giving me salary and questioning
Yeah.
my research? And, it went very ad hominem, personal rather than actually talking about the content. And what is happening is, and most of the posts were like, I tried AI, it didn't work. There's this to Noam Chomsky's idea of AI being, a technology for plagiarism. And then you have another idea by, uh, I'm forgetting the name of the person, stochastic parrots, basically, that they are just
Bender. Yeah, Emily
Bender,
Bender.
right? Emily Bender, yeah. So, so now that you have these things, and everyone is actually parroting on stochastic parrots, that these are stochastic parrots, right? When in fact, as a researcher, I can attest that it's much much more than that. People who are saying that stochastic parrot actually don't have any sense of what AI is actually currently able to do. From a creative writing perspective, where do you first do you give any credibility to the claim that AI can actually write better than humans, or maybe make humans superhumans at writing before we move on to even talk about it? Can you qualify the AI systems,
Yeah,
LLMs?
I come from a few different perspectives on this. One is right away in November and December of 2022, when OpenAI dropped ChatGPT, one of the very first things that they brought out as proof that it was a really, worthwhile to pay attention to it was poetry,
Mhm.
that it could do these interesting. So they would do these basically just toy poems or lyrics. I still, even now, poetry feels to me to be where it's still not great. It's good. It depends on how well the human uses it, I think, when it comes to creative work. I think with essay writing, creative essay writing, some fiction, it's become better and better. And Anthropic, like the Claude models in particular, are quite good. Um, but the other perspective I come at this from is it's been within my discipline. So when I was doing my MFA, the avant-garde, even in the late the early 2000s, there was an avant-garde, there was this term called flarf, Flarf. And it was poets who were using Google searches to randomize poems. It's like do Google searches and then randomly pull language from those Google. It was very, very early and it felt very on the edge and
Hmm.
avant-garde to combine technological experiments, new technology with the creative process. And back then, it felt very innovative and interesting. And so for me, it just fits in a tradition of writers who have always been curious. How does the typewriter change poetry? How does Google change how we do poetry? And then in and then when ChatGPT landed, most creatives were instantly against it. Not all of them, but
Hmm.
most of them. And it feels like most academics that I encounter, not maybe increasingly it's shifting, at least at Lindenwood in my conversations, there's more of a mix. But it seemed like most academics felt like they knew right away we should be against this. Um, but in creative writing, at least, that there have always been writers who were curious, like what kinds of different effects that can I achieve?
Hmm.
And I think within creative writing, there's a split between what I call the romantic idea of authorship, which is there's a united human mind, a human self that can create from almost looking in your mind, seeing what you want to say, and then as a genius, bring forth the art.
Hmm.
And in our book, we question this. We say, even if we wanted to require disclosure, and to be transparent about creating something or writing something, I don't think we can. Like, I don't think we know, even in theory, where our thoughts come from,
Hmm.
where our language comes from. Like, how would I know where the poem came from that I write tomorrow? Like,
Hmm.
it comes from things I read, it comes from some random dream I might have had, or things I ate that made me think a different
Yeah.
way. So you can't actually know where the mind is localized, I don't think. And so you
Hmm.
can't disclose, um,
Very true.
yeah. And so there's a kind of theoretical, interesting thing, which is that question. But then there's the practical one, at least in creative writing, of experimentation being just freeing and interesting, and suddenly it clamped down. Like
Hmm.
as soon as we said, "Oh, these are all tech bros," okay, we have to be against it. And
You
that to
know,
me feels very unfortunate.
no, it is. It is very unfortunate. So at one point, all the alarmists are basically ignoring the fact that how fast, I don't think they have a proper understanding of exponential function, that how fast actually these language models are evolving. And it will take just one, or two iterations to reach a level at which it will be unidentifiable. I think we are close to that, maybe few months or a years.
Yeah,
Given if you, especially if you have been using since 2022 and you've seen how models are evolving, so they are kind of agnostic to, or I'll say naive to that rate of improvement happening in AI. Second, I think uh, it doesn't align with any ethical framework, because if you think about it, I feel AI very empowering. Uh, so language has been a basically a utilitarian evolved function to communicate our inner self, to take it to somebody else's inner self. And in that communication from this soul to that soul, you just don't need the language of yourself, but you also need the comprehension of your partner or audience, right?
yeah,
And both are limited by interaction, by their comprehension, by their language abilities. And now you have a machine or technology which kind of democratizes, at least to a certain extent, that language. That even with a little language, you can actually express yourself and you can learn how to express yourself, right? So the same academic community, which was very pro empowerment historically, cannot see that empowering aspect of this technology, which
yeah,
is extremely saddening to see.
yeah. I do think underneath there's a question of how is value related to effort? So one goal in education, and I think it works in economics as well, which is the way we can determine whether something is valuable for a student to do is measured in how long it might take the student to do it,
Mhm.
or how much effort a student might need to put in. And if a student can do something in 3 minutes that used to take 4 weeks, suddenly it seems like it's useless. And so that hasn't been figured out. I don't think we know how to assign value to something that has almost almost no effort. If I can generate 20 essays in an afternoon, whereas before I would have students take 15 weeks to write maybe three, maybe four essays, the value of the writing has gone almost to zero. And so I just think that's psychologically incredibly destabilizing, and we haven't figured out how to. No, we already knew this. We already knew. So I don't know if you've had this kind of conversation, but I would often have students turn something in and they would brag a little bit. They would say, um, I forgot about this and I did it last night right at the end. I did it quickly in an hour and wow, here it is. Look how, and
Mhm.
applying the same principle, that should mean that it's not valuable because they only took, but
Right, right.
but we know that that kind of essay in many cases could be even better written than another essay that a student labored on day after day. Um, and to me, this principle is one that is underneath a lot of the insecurity and difficulty we're having in education, and I think outside too. Like if a musician can create something without putting those years of study
Mhm.
into playing the instrument and the AI just generates the music, we feel like it can't have value then. Um,
Yeah, so do you think this has roots with how traditionally we have been kind of valuing labor in terms of hours rather than so the way the economic system works, a lot of times we are not paid by projects, we are paid by hours,
yeah.
right? Especially for jobs which are more labor intensive. Uh, I mean, uh, I personally prefer always, the project idea. It gives more certainty and it actually values talent more than the per hour, and it is less prone to abuse. Do you think that's based on our current economic system?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely seems to be. Um, in fact, just something like a letter of recommendation.
Hmm.
The purpose of a letter of recommendation in many ways is Ethan Mollick makes this point about recommendations where he says if you generate a letter of recommendation with an AI, then you've short-circuited the purpose of it because the whole goal of it is to say as a recommender, I'm willing to put a certain amount of time and effort into doing this. I I think that might be wrong, though.
I agree.
I think the purpose of the letter of recommendation is the knowledge that we can gain about the applicant from the letter. Like, what can it tell us about this person? And so the information in it is more valuable than however much time it might have taken the person to write it. But I'm hearing this from colleagues who say that a colleague who was using AI to write letters of recommendation and then being confronted by someone who says that's not ethical, it's not right to do that.
Mhm.
I don't know. It seems to me it should be fine.
Or do you think is it that AI is actually exposing how kind of nonsensical a lot of things are? So one can make a case against letters of recommendation that if letter of recommendation actually work, then why is it that we have so many bad hires in academia and we regularly have including students?
Yeah.
And if they, and one can also make an argument that the letters of recommendation work more as a coercive, or subconscious coercive gates
Yeah.
uh, rather than actually serving any other purpose. Because you, as a professor, hold a lot of power over your students and over, undergraduates, especially PhD students. with the letter of recommendations you write. And maybe if we get rid of letter of recommendations, we can actually focus on people's own presentation and skill set.
Yeah. I'm toying around with the idea of in essays. So because I teach writing, the essay, the college essay is the foundation of a lot of what we do.
Mhm.
I'm wondering whether the best thing in a few years will be for students to submit their prompts and conversations instead
Mhm.
of the final essays. I think those are much more interesting to see what a student is thinking than some final product, which even in one reason that I've been so quick to adopt AI and I don't see it as a threat is I've been watching student writing. I've been reading freshman composition writing for 20 some years now. And the idea that it wasn't templated before is absurd.
Mhm.
Like, college writing has been fitting a template, fitting a particular form
Yeah,
for a really long time. And that's why AI is so automatically good at it, because it knows this is what
right.
things look like and I can churn that out.
Mhm.
So what we need really is a way of getting to the student thinking more easily and prompts. That seems really interesting to me as a possible alternative. Um, but I think we're in that position. We have to rethink. What AI is showing us is how much of the work we're doing is templated, is
Exactly. Yeah.
clicking through, and it took time before, but now it won't take time anymore. So we either have to bar the AI and hold on to the old work, or we have to let the AI do all the templates and think about what we're going to be doing now.
Right. I think it is disrupting at different levels. So, for instance, with NIH, somebody submitted 40 plus applications last year, a lot of AI generated. So now there's a rule that you can submit only 6 applications a year now. So it definitely hurts, young researchers, especially those who would have anyway submitted, a larger number of applications, given that the odds are a little stacked against them. Uh, at another level, it also questions a little bit about the application, like how is it that you can actually submit the application, right? Which means that the way we kind of award grants maybe is not the most efficient way. Maybe there should be more weightage on past production of work or, people's ability to do something rather than actually what they propose, right? Uh, so it is exposing systems at every level that how rut they became over time and how easy it is to, how easy it is to, I don't know what to say that. Superhumanification of certain individuals uh, or game the system. I don't know what you would
You
say.
made a post on LinkedIn, I think yesterday, or was it the day before? I'm not sure. It was the one where you were talking about Chomsky and Bender, and you were saying
Yeah, 2 days back. Yeah.
that there's two different worlds. There's the
Mhm.
world of those who are more the institutional figures who are saying we shouldn't allow this, we shouldn't.
Yeah.
And then there's the reality of increasingly people just using it.
Yeah.
And the fact that people are just using it to do real work means that these are serious tools. Like we
Right.
would actually be using them if they weren't
Right. Right.
effective. Um, and so the reason not to use them seems very flimsy.
It's funny. It's hypocritical because the same people who are against it in a very ideological fashion are also the ones who say that it's a bubble, everything AI is fraud and AI is bad. But at the same time, they are very concerned about people losing jobs. So how is it that AI is so bad, but still, so you cannot be very secure about your standpoint on AI and very insecure about the jobs being associated with AI.
I know I haven't understood that from the beginning. It seems like you have to choose. You have to choose that it's
Right,
hype,
right.
it's not real, in which case you shouldn't care.
But hype is not new, right? Everything is a hype. I mean, our whole celebrity culture is a hype, or university rankings are a hype. So it's not that this is the only hype we which exists or we believe in.
Hmm. I'm just amazed. Like at least weekly, if not every day or every few days, I use AI to do something that I'm shocked that it can do it. And that started in 2022 at the end of the year when ChatGPT landed, and it's been pretty continuous since then. Um, I wish I'm trying right now to get an AI club started at Lindenwood of students who are just enthusiasts who want to start
Mhm.
using it and experimenting with it. And there are some students who want to. I think there's a gap. The same thing is happening with students that you talked about in your post. There's what you say publicly, and
Yeah.
most students publicly will say, "Oh, no, I don't. I shouldn't use AI," and they don't want to say they are because they're worried about consequences.
Mhm.
And then there's probably a majority of students who are using it to do their work,
Mhm.
but not admitting it because they don't think they should. Even even in places where they are allowed to.
Mhm.
Because at least in my classes, I tell them you're allowed to use AI for any part of the process that you want.
Right.
In my composition classes, you can use AI to get ideas for your papers. You can use AI to research, like read articles for you and tell you what the articles say. You can use AI to draft your papers. You can use AI to revise the papers. You can use it at any stage of the process that you want. Um, I've grappled with what to do next.
Mhm.
Um, because one solution to this problem is how do you avoid students just not even thinking at all?
Mhm.
Um, you can have them you disclose at each stage how they used AI. And this is what a lot of people are doing. So tell me how you used it for this, show me your prompts. I'm not sure that's the best solution long term because it triples or even quadruples the amount
Yeah.
of stuff they have to do. Um, so there, I think in-person conversations with students where you just talk about what they're doing is probably the best way. But that won't work in at scale. That won't work in classes where you have maybe online classes where you can't do that kind of back and forth. So pedagogically, it's still quite difficult. I'm not sure what the best solutions are.
So what exactly is at stake here? Is it the student engagement which is at stake, or is it our ability to test them which is at stake? I don't think people are very clear about what they're concerned about, students learning or their ability to rate them and relative to their peers.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. You probably were following over the summer when the MIT article came
Mhm.
out that was saying that there's cognitive
Yeah,
impairment.
I don't buy any of that.
Why
The
don't you buy
neuroscientist,
it?
I mean, it's completely illogical. I'll give you a simple example. Uh, First, an analogy. Let's talk about 3D printing. 3D printing is doing the same thing which LLMs is doing, for writing. In 3D printer, you don't need to carve something. You don't need to take a block of wood and basically remove stuff to create something. But you actually create it using a kind of a cognitive map. You basically make it, and now you have a machine printing it. But now you can get the precision which you could have never got, with the hand. So now question is that are we actually losing the skill to make things? Was it really required to chip away, wooden chips? So that was also a chance event that we got wood in the nature, and that's why we were using wood. Had it
Mm,
some other material, we would have actually, made the object in a very different fashion. So I don't buy from that standpoint that we would lose skills. Okay. How many of us know really how well, how nicely to cook? But the reality is that like were cooks better in the past? Actually not. Our ancestors used to cook very simple food with very simple ingredients. Our culinary arts are much more advanced now, and we have access to much better food now across the board. But a lot of us don't know how to cook. But how does it affect us? As a society, we have better food available now than ever before, right?
yeah.
Uh, so that's from that standpoint. The second is even thinking from a neuroscientific perspective. I think their measures and what they're looking for is very short-sighted and very focused on one particular, like nobody knows what brain activation means, first of all. And there are equally powerful solid studies on the other side, which can interpret. If you put the lens coming out from that findings, you'll just invert the conclusion. So I think it's a very selective clickbait, anti AI,
Yeah.
ideologically driven science.
Yeah. I mean, in one sense, what that study showed is if you use AI to write a paper
Yeah.
and all you do is put in a prompt, write a paper, then you won't know what's in the paper. But that just seems obvious. Like if you tell the AI to write something and you didn't write any of the words and then you didn't read it or interrogate it or question it along the way, then you won't know as well what's in it. But that's just,
Or maybe it's more about how basically prone you are to activation, how stimulated you are with those content. And if AI is writing that content for you, you are less stimulated by that content compared to when you have written by hand.
yeah, yeah. I mean, for me, I find that as I create things and write things and interrogate with AI, I gain. I mean, I don't do studies on myself, so I don't know what those would.
Yeah.
My experience is that I have a deepening knowledge as I work with the AIs on things that
Hmm.
I study. So I care a great deal about knowledge and understanding things, and if I thought it was damaging me, I wouldn't be using the tools.
Hmm.
But I'm using them 3, 4, 5+ hours a day because they're fascinating, interesting. I feel like I'm deepening knowledge of things, and
Right.
I want my students to use them for the same reason.
The other hypocrisy is that academics themselves create metrics and they love shouting their matrices like H index, item index, impact factors, right? So at one point, we ourselves as a community are very goal oriented in terms of looking at numbers and outputs. Like, who cares how much I understand or how good a scientist I am? Yeah, maybe some people who are my collaborators, some students I train, but rest of the academic community are just interested in my impact factors. So how is that different than how you know what I mean? I mean,
Yeah.
uh, uh, this rage against AI is not the same principles. They are living their own lives anyways.
I think at bottom it comes from a very fundamental issue, which is wanting to believe in human uniqueness.
Mhm.
Creativity felt like a thing that was what defined humanity and when I remember reading articles about AI advances in the mid 2010s maybe, and consistently they would say things like, well, eventually we'll be able to do data entry, math, maybe like driving, whatever, but it'll never be able to do art. Creativity is what makes us, it's the
Yeah,
human spark, something
yeah.
like that.
Mhm.
And then suddenly we find out that they can. And it is psychologically for people who have placed the value of human uniqueness in creativity, it's very destabilizing. I never thought that was true. I just don't think I don't think creativity is some unique, different thing from other kinds of activities. And so it's not surprising to me that AI can do recombination, reinterpretation.
Mhm.
Um,
I mean, for me, I don't see many differences. Let's talk about driving, for instance, right? Humans are uniquely able to walk bipedally. We used to walk bipedally everywhere we used to go, but then we have now cars, which is fine. Cars allow us to go far distances, and we can carry our three or four more, members of our family, which we were not able to do. And now we join classes to learn how to drive cars, right? When somebody who has told us that your gait is not good enough, I think you need to correct your asymmetry in your walking, or you're having a lot of lateral sway, right? There's no classes for that. We never
yeah.
judge people based on that. We judge people based on their driving skills, the kind of cars they drive, and whether they have a driving license. So I think there are a lot of fields in which we have completely stop thinking about human uniqueness, and we are very comfortable. In fact, we take pride in how far we are from it. And if I'm interested in human bipedal gait, I can go running. I go to gym, to use a treadmill. Likewise, if somebody is very interested in writing themselves, nobody has taught people to write creatively, despite AI being part of the process.
Yeah. I tried a thought experiment for my students
Mhm.
last week. I said, let's imagine that the way driving worked
Mhm.
is you had to have knowledge of the engine mechanisms more completely in order to drive. So
Mhm.
I don't know how it would work, but
That's a good
somehow you
point.
have to be able to push different buttons and
Yeah.
things to make the pistons move and all of that. And so that was what driver's education was
Uh-huh.
a layer lower. And it
Right.
was very difficult to learn to drive because you had to master all of these different mechanisms.
Mhm.
And then someone invented the car the way
Yeah.
it is now, where all you have to do is press a pedal and a brake. And then you can imagine the protest. You can imagine the protest of the educational community saying, well, if all they have to do is press the accelerator, the critical thinking is gone, like the knowledge
Mhm.
is gone, and how will they survive? How will they be able to understand what it means to
Yeah.
drive? That's what we're facing in writing now.
Uh-huh.
We don't have to write at the word by word level anymore. We can now write at the paragraph by paragraph or essay by essay level.
Yeah.
And the panic is, will we cease being able to think if we don't have to learn word by word thinking? And that does seem to me to be a profound, interesting question. And
Mhm.
I don't know. I don't know if you have opinions about this, but if 3-year-olds, 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, elementary students, will we get to a point where they learn to write by just asking the AIs to,
I think there's some very interesting work in linguistics. So, for instance, we know certain cultures where they don't have names for certain colors.
and
So,
yeah,
so, right. So we have a whole bandwidth of the whole spectrum of colors. Certain cultures have much more, they have more differentiated spectrum. Some other cultures actually do not. And when kids learn, they start with, RGB, red, green, blue. And then within blue, they know like now cyan, violet, the red, vermilion, right? The division, yellow, ochre, all these divisions happen over time. And within humans also, there's a distinction, like for instance, women are really great at colors, I feel. Because women, I mean, they tend to be picky about, colors and clothings and combinations and, in general, home decor and everything. So I think they're more sensitive to color probably. Uh, and historically, evolutionary speaking as well, females of species are more, they have better ways to, uh, look at colors. So we already, as a species, we are not variable in terms of how we see colors, how we talk about colors, and the solid work on whether your vocabulary about that actually changes how you express things. So when it comes to vocabulary, I really feel that people who do not have a large vocabulary have issues communicating, grasping ideas, comprehending, and so language has a lot to do with your emotional ability to deal and make relationships. How you look at the world, rationalize events. The question is that whether that will impede that basic building blocks, right? That's the question. But we already know that kids who have very low vocabulary, when they read a lot, they learn just by reading the vocabulary because when they read stuff, there's a lot more words, right,
yeah.
in what they're reading. And what LLMs are doing there as well, I think, are if we just create something and ship it off, that's a different issue. But if we generate something and we actually want to understand what we have done, I think they are a really great teacher because they're exposed to us to things stochastically, which was very little. The probability of that was very low otherwise. So
Yeah.
I think even from that perspective, I think LLMs are empowering to somebody spending time. Then actually they are not.
And if they become more and more interactive with other modalities, so I can imagine kids growing up speaking to LLMs, speaking to whatever the AI is,
Yeah.
and having those interactions. Yeah, mode collapse is an issue. So I've started to do work with mode collapse, which is the idea in AI that they funnel towards relatively generic, high probability results are going to feature especially large. There's a paper that came out that at least claims that if you include probabilities within your prompts, you can create more diversity in outcomes. So if you say something like create and prompt for an image of scorpions for me and give me three prompts that are at the tail of the distribution so that
Hmm.
they're and if you include probabilities within the prompts, you're more likely to avoid the generic content.
Uh,
So I'm curious about because you could imagine, to me, this is the biggest problem. I'm really worried that eventually the mode collapse problem will lead to a lack of creativity because everyone will be using high probability AI outputs, and we won't learn as well how to create genuinely creative, unique output.
I don't buy that. Why? Because yes, AI has a tendency for mode collapse, but I believe in human propensity to differentiate themselves and try to be unique. And I think
Yeah,
a lot of people are already trying that. So when you see, LinkedIn posts or posts, at like, Substack and other places, people are using AI very heavily. But people who are trying to mask that, and people who are trying to mask that are coming up with unique ways to
yeah,
write. So I am very kind of bullish on human ability or human desire to differentiate themselves, which will beat the AI, or in this game. That's my take on it.
yeah.
So I'm personally not concerned about that.
And I think to bring it back to the book,
Yeah.
I think that if we require disclosure, it reduces
Yes.
it reduces motivation for that. Because if you have to disclose not only that you use AI, but how you used it,
Yes.
reduces the value of creating your own methods.
So that brings me to a very important question, and we will definitely, very soon deep dive into especially the legal aspects of disclosure. So, because your book is, I mean, it sounds a very simple name, but you have touched a lot of different grounds in different chapters of the book. It's a very diverse set of perspectives around disclosure. Uh, so if you have seen, I have posted one of the posts that because of this political stance on AI, it's very hard to share your tricks because there are a lot of tricks you discover by your specific use, and they solve days of work for it let you do it in minutes, or
Mhm.
or rapid improvements on that, or certain things you are not afraid to make mistakes because now you know that you'll be able to use an LLM to correct those mistakes, right? So you're bold with your kind of work, but at the same time you cannot disclose those. One, for legal reasons, that whether you are allowed to take a shortcut. And second, for a perception management issue, that as you said, that the community, uh, you know we always value hard work. So what would happen to your credibility? Because nobody would focus on what you have created, but actually how fast you created, right? And because of these hesitations, you have these tricks which are hiding in different closets right now, and they are not coming out in public. So as a society, we are losing, and students are not learning those tricks because no professor is willing to tell that student that trick, right? And disclosure is working completely against the propagation of these tricks.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts on this?
Well, it's interesting because on the one hand, our the official like policy that we're trying to advocate in the book is not disclosure,
Yeah.
which would lead to keeping your tricks closer to the vest.
Uh-huh.
Um, but we don't think that the reason that we don't disclose should come from fear, which is what's happening now.
Right. Yeah.
Um, it that's why it seems best to argue for not just never disclose or always disclose, but for a new default. that the default should be
Hmm.
don't expect disclosure and don't punish someone if you find out that they didn't disclose. Instead, have a default that you shouldn't have to say how you do something, and then carve out situations where we do disclose. For example, how did you do that? I'm really curious how you got that effect in your writing. Would you share that with me? And then you can have these discussions about tricks, things that lead to interesting effects. And that would be that's natural that that would happen in education. That because it's simply the fact that in a class where students are allowed to use AI, and in my composition classes, again, I let them and I encourage them to, I still have a lot of variability in product. So if the critics are right that it reduces any effort or it reduces any thinking, then
Hmm.
all of the output should be approximately the same.
Yeah.
But I can tell some students who hardly worked at all using AI, and other students who worked quite hard still using AI. And I can see a different outcome. And so that
Hmm.
leads to, well, let's discuss it. Now's the appropriate time to disclose. One interesting thing, and ChatGPT brought this up because I've been asking ChatGPT about this disclosure and how it might work in education. And I said, well, because in composition pedagogy, we have this idea of teaching a process, not the product. And if we don't disclose, then you would think that prevents the discussion of process. So I asked ChatGPT about this, and it said, well, maybe allow students to voluntarily disclose the parts of their process that they would like to disclose. Give students the freedom to hide the parts of the process that they choose to, and then disclose the parts of the process that they would like to. And that might lead to stimulating, interesting conversation. That seems like within education, that seems like an interesting approach.
Hmm. No, I completely agree with you. What are you doing in your classes? Okay, so before that, are you getting a lot of hate or not?
Well, I'm not actually I see the kind of responses you get on LinkedIn.
Hmm.
I'm not posting all that much
Yeah.
on public social media sites, and so I won't call it hate
Hmm.
because it's my students, but I do get pushback from creative writing students.
Hmm.
So I get in my more general education courses, I get more enthusiasm from students who just want to, they're more practical. How can I use AI to help me in my work? Creative writing students are much more concerned with the word by word differences in writing, and AI does zoom over that so fast
Hmm.
that they resist that. And so again, I won't call it hate, but I've gotten to a point in my creative writing classes where I know I need to limit the amount of times I talk about AI because I
But
know they don't want to
it's a
talk.
it's a trigger word. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what about peers? Especially, at other institutions and in your community in general across the country.
In general, my experience is that within the humanities, there's quite a lot of suspicion that AI is damaging education, is damaging student thinking,
Hmm.
student effort, and so we should oppose it. And so I have had sometimes pretty contentious conversations,
Uh-huh.
yeah, with other faculty or faculty at other institutions yeah, who say that it's unethical to introduce AI into the classroom, damages students. It feels like right now maybe there's a shift. I don't know. I don't have studies on it myself that I could share, so I'm not sure.
I personally thought that this is kind of a missing opportunity because if you think from a humanities standpoint, the departments of linguistics, language, sociology, this has a lot of sociological repercussions, right? Uh, and uh, and all the topics which humanities was traditionally interested in are very close at the heart of AI, right? So I thought it was actually
Yeah.
a great opportunity for humanities to engage across the board
Yeah.
rather than, wholesale, rejecting it.
Well, that's why at Lindenwood
Yeah.
we've built a
Yes,
human-centered
right.
AI program within humanities
Mm-hmm.
because we think that's where it naturally fits best.
Mm-hmm.
Like Andrei Karpathy said from the beginning, like the hottest new programming language is English. I mean the ability to do things with natural language, which is and rhetorical choices that you make with your prompts.
Mm-hmm.
To me, from the very beginning, that's my background is studying rhetoric and how we try to persuade something, which to
Mm-hmm.
me is the prompt. So it feels like LLMs, at least generative AI, belong very well within humanities programs.
I
And so
think
I was
prompt and
very
yes.
surprised. I was extremely surprised. I remember a very early discussion among at the just at Lindenwood about this, and I went into the discussion feeling excited. It was like, this is amazing. And I wasn't prepared for how much anxiety, pushback there was from peers. I've come to adjust to that and
Mm-hmm.
understand where they're coming from, but it was a big surprise to me because it feels so intuitive to me that AI and humanities they're a perfect fit.
Yeah, I think the terminology prompt engineering probably did a disservice.
Yeah.
Had that terminology did not come, probably, we would have looked at prompt in a very different way. But
Mm.
there was a lot of hype about prompt engineering at certain point. And I think that did a little disservice. Because there are certain keywords which communities kind of start embracing, and certain keywords, they are kind of apathetic to, and it fell into that,
Yeah.
it crossed that
Vibe
boundary.
coding now.
Vibe coding, yeah, yeah, exactly. Tom.
Yeah.
All the buzzwords like that. Okay, so regarding what is happening currently in academia, so the disclosure, it works at every level. From student essays to when I publish a paper or you publish a book, right? To at every level where you produce a document. Currently, disclosures are applied in a very kind of sporadic manner. Certain publishers want it, certain don't have it. Certain come up with a threat. Some are very kind of they have it because they think that they should have it because others are having it, or if they don't have it, people will be suspicious about them.
Mm.
So a lot of policy enforcement is basically to manage perception than actually having an illegal, hold on it. So where do you think we are with respect to the disclosure, and what is at stake? Are we seeing, a future where a lot of academics would be cancelled coming back in the past and we will discard their work? Because a lot of times I see that regarding two of my posts which definitely do not they're very very far away from the LLM output, but I got the because of a terminology, and I have been using M dashes. I loved M dash since my high school, and there was an art to using M dash. M dash is not random. There's a way you use an M dash. Uh, right? And now because of AI, now these things have become, you look down upon M dashes.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't, but I love M dashes. I want more of those. I think they're the best punctuation. So now there's a lot of hatred towards M dashes, and people will see one or two of those, right? Because everyone is trying to figure out what is AI and what is not, and they all have made their own, shorthands, heuristics about if it is this structure, like it isn't good. In fact, like it isn't, but it is kind of structure. People instantly assume that that's AI, but if you actually look at if you uh, and I think where it's coming from is that if you listen to CNN or some really news channel with some good English 10 years back, the media was still using this particular. You look at documentaries, they were still using this kind of format, uh, like David Attenborough's documentaries, for instance. So so a lot of hate comes that, oh, this is AI written, and that's why it's not credible. And we cannot even comment on it now because we don't know whether it's your thoughts or is it AI, even though I have written that, right? So do you think in the future we are seeing a lot of cancellation of academics or people's credibility because people will dig the skeletons and like, oh, that was because of AI? and that work was done by AI. So that means that this scholar is kind of done, or coming legally that they used AI when they were not supposed to, and they actually made a disclaimer that they did not, but they actually used, and we have a proof. So let's put this person in jail. Where do you
Mhm.
think we are heading towards?
Well, two things. One, I mean, in our politics and culture war discussions, we have these events where someone is canceled because you go back and find something they said 10 years ago of a
Uh-huh.
political sort. That could happen. This to me is the worst case, where 5 years from now we start going back to things that people wrote now and find evidence of AI use, and then we cancel them or sue them for, things. I'm more hopeful. I'm more hopeful that what happens is as people who are 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 now just become acclimated to using AI as they grow up, that they'll treat it the way that we treat Microsoft Word or Google, that it'll seem bizarre to them that you would have to disclose AI
Mhm.
because it's just so pervasive that you don't disclose something that everyone is using. Um, Also, I think that as people use AI and actually become very productive using AI and feel the benefits of it, they're just naturally going to want to favor policies that allow them to do it. That the benefit is just so hot, so great.
Mhm.
And I think it's still a minority of people who are using it in a truly beneficial, productive way, but it's going to grow. And as more and more people are seeing genuine benefit, I do think it'll lead to,
So market forces will take care of a
yeah,
lot of these things.
I think so. Now, how long it takes for the etiquette to change?
Uh-huh.
So just this general feel that human is better and AI is
Yeah.
slop or AI, that could take a little while, but I'm hopeful that within 4 or 5 years, it'll gradually become a non-issue. Part of that, though, is related to jobs. Like I do think if the job apocalypse happens and we see huge spikes in unemployment,
Yeah.
then that's a different factor because AI becomes a true villain at that point.
But now we are at a stage where, because you have multiple, economy is not just, kind of one, or what do you call it, one pony show. It is a very multifaceted, very complex system. But we also risk attributing any kind of massive unemployment to AI, even though
Mhm.
it might not be the case, right? AI might be a scapegoat for other economic or other structural issues with the economy across the world.
There was a Wall Street Journal article 2 days ago that
Mhm.
that said that attributed AI as a cause for drops in white
E-
collar
So,
work.
so this is actually happening. I mean, because our media houses generally also have a political standpoint, uh,
Yeah.
right?
If you're at the New York Times or if you're at, I mean, you see AI as a threat. You don't, you, so there's it's probably similar to how academics in general would see AI as a threat
Yeah,
and so would favor critiques over
right,
exploration.
right, right, right.
Um,
Exactly. I mean, had it been a different administration, probably academia would have been more favorable to AI. I think it's confounding with a lot of
that's
political
true.
discourse, right?
That is true. Yeah.
So, okay. So that we have covered. What about the disparity AI is creating? So not in terms of, the disparity in salaries and in tech jobs and that stuff, but even at the productive, even among the users. So, for instance, our individual, the institutions have their souls of their own, right? Like academic institutions, funding institutions, all of these institutions exist without, any of us. We are very kind of disposable parts of these institutions, right? And institutions follow very different kind of incentive structure compared to what we incentivize ourselves for. And institutions based on credible numbers, productivity, outputs, things like that, right? They don't care, how creative I am in my head or what I do. They just look for numbers, generally speaking. So, how do you think this structure will maintain itself in this form? Because Do you think the reward structures or our expectations from even in the academic community will change because you have this disparity where people who would be having AI not just for writing but integrated in all their workflows, or who have technological know-how to automate things will definitely have a lead in terms of their productive capacity, whether it's in arts, creative arts, or whether it is, hard sciences. And that will create disparities over time in the productivity. So, do you think universities will change the scaling? They will actually rate you on log scale now instead of the linear scale, on exponential? That okay, we have two categories of people: one who do not adapt AI, one who adapt AI, and we have to judge differently. Or do you think the universities will change their expectations from professors over time uh, of what we
Yeah.
produce, how we produce?
I sus I suspect what will be happening is right now and over the next 2 or 3 years, as there's still a minority of people who are using AI and know how to use it productively, we'll have an increase in the number of people who just from the outside look incredibly productive. And it's hard to even imagine they can be so productive.
Yeah,
But then as more people are able to do comparable amounts of work, um, I think we would face in workload and just things, reports that are created or, assessment, all these things that eventually can be generated almost automatically.
hmm,
We'll face the same thing in those workload cases that we do in courses, where we just know that asking students to generate 20 papers is possible, but what would the point be?
hmm,
I think it has to lead to serious rethinking about why we're doing these things. And I would hope that within our bureaucratic structures, it leads to the same thing that I hope will happen in school, which is we need to completely rethink what the students turn in. It just
right.
has to be something else because it's trivial to do those things.
Or even the popular schooling. I mean, if I remember my schooling, I went to a Catholic school. All my I grew up in a Catholic school. And one of the hardest, in the city where, every kid is very ambitious and, you know, uh, mostly lower middle class to middle class kids, parents who want to work very hard on their kids because kids are the only way, they will climb out of lower middle class status. Very hard to get in the schools, very hard, very strict policies regarding, hygiene and, how you present yourself, language and maths and all these things. But still, most of the education I received was completely useless. I mean, a lot of this was compliance, which I now understand. You have to polish your shoes every day, otherwise you stand out of the class. I still cannot go out of my home without a polished shoe, and a iron, iron clothing. I just cannot go out without an iron clothing. It's like a psychological inbuilt from that, which I think was good. But at the same time, a lot of I read about especially in courses where you had to mug up facts, a lot of those were redundant and they never helped me a lot. I mean, though I learned very little in school, right? And I spent there like 12, 13 years. And I do not have a control condition where I could compare that how much
Yes.
I would have learned. That's a problem of justifying the system because we do not have controlled experiments. Uh,
Mhm.
so you can always say that was good or bad or that was the best possible solution. But I think, given how much time I spent, I should have learned more. I should have learned more economics. I should have learned more about investment. I should have learned more about, food. I was not told anything in my schooling about food or culinary history. I had a history of somebody invaded India and their son and their son and their son, like sixth generation, all the names. But I was never taught about the culinary history of the country when India is such rich, with respect to its food. So, so do you think now we are at a junction where very soon we have to completely rethink the education system? But at the same time, there's a risk to doing that because if you go into that thinking zone, you'll make mistakes, and those mistakes can be an excuse to just take away the funding or take away the public support for those institutions. So I understand the conservatism which comes because of that risk.
Yeah.
So
Well, maybe to ask the question, compare it again to the institutional bureaucratic structure as well as a school. Um, so one thing that I do at Lindenwood is I work on assessment. I work on creating assessment reports for the English department. You could imagine a future where that becomes useless work completely because the AI could just churn out so much data and analysis that it would be automated, and therefore you would have this paradox where the report is generated by the AI and then the AI
Uh,
reads it and it just cycles. So that's a kind of absurdity that could happen. But it is possible that these AI systems become genuinely profound in their analysis, and we feed in more and more data, and it actually gives us valuable insight that
mhm,
is difficult to get now because someone like me is creating the assessment reports who has some knowledge of using Excel and like, but I'm an English professor. I don't have advanced data analysis skills.
mhm.
But if I could be using AI to do that kind of work, and if we could increase the amount of data that we give to the system, a more positive outcome is these bureaucratic systems with more and more AI embedded
Mhm.
yield true insight. And maybe if we start embedding AI into our courses in a more fundamental way, we give them all the student writing. We don't fear the AI is reducing student knowledge, but we use it to analyze sentence patterns in students. We include the students in analyzing their own sentence patterns, their own thinking, and it produces genuine insight. Right now, we're so worried that AI will damage work or damage students that we're not even using it. Already, I think it could.
Yeah.
Like, if I were allowed to put all of my student writing just into AI without worrying about anonymizing student information, and if my students were open to it, and I say, from day one,
Mhm.
everything you do in here, just have a long conversation with an AI that's I don't know, 2 million context, and just everything that we do, just drop it in there and start showing it your writing.
Yeah.
I have no doubt that by the end, they would have a much deeper understanding of their own work, their own thinking, than how we've done it for years.
You're very right about that. So when people used to write with pen and paper with ink, it's hard to delete. It's hard to reiterate, right? And if you see the writing, it's very kind of constipated writing, I feel, from the past. I think we have got more creative. I mean, people can read Shakespeare and so, consider Shakespeare God, but I think we have much better writing now than it was in the past. That's how I feel about it. There's a specific historical way of writing, and we appreciate that and the context and the nostalgia. But at the same time, I think our modern English writing is much more flamboyant, okay, and it has more degrees of freedom of expression. Uh, you know, and it's more democratic. That's my take on. I think we have got better with writing as a society, and that's why we have a larger vocabulary. We have bigger number of clauses now, idioms, and the whole inventory we have is much larger. So you know, sorry, I missed the boat here. So where I was going was with that was. Uh, can you remind me the point you were
Yeah.
saying?
Well, the point I was making was about if the students are putting all of their writing and all of their work into an AI over the course of a
Yeah,
semester, it can give them genuine insight into their
yeah.
work.
So when we moved from writing with ink to writing, on a Word file where we can reiterate, right? We could do things we could not do with the previous technology, right? And now
Yeah.
we can go back to the past paragraph. We can zoom out and look at it, and based on that zooming out, we can change the structures, and that's how we write manuscripts now.
Hmm.
And with AI now, especially when you are talking to it and when you are getting a feedback, right? Or when you're reiterating. Now it is adding a second dimension to that, which is a self-reflection dimension, which was never there in the writing, even in the word processor. So now you're suddenly, if you reiterate and if you work hard, you're writing, you understand yourself, as you said, much more. You
Yeah.
understand the system. In fact, working with AI is also trying to understand how AI works, how that system is actually tuned. So it's not just you are retuning yourself. it's a brain-machine interface, basically. You're understanding the AI system as well, you're understanding yourself much better and more comprehensively than we were able to do with Word before.
I have no doubt that the
Yeah.
resistance to AI right now is it's almost it's almost outright deception to me.
Hmm.
So when people like Gary Marcus or Emily Bender
Yeah.
say it's all a hoax, it's nothing, I think they're just lying. Like,
Yeah,
I,
especially the kind of
I don't.
understanding they have. Yeah.
It either means they're not using the tools, like they tried it years ago, and even though they're AI experts, they're just not. It's hard to believe that's what's happening, but it feels to me that they're not actually being serious about how
I.
much these can accomplish. Because I write things with AI,
Mhm.
then I'll write something the next week. I'll feed the thing I wrote last week in. I'll ask it questions. It will make connections between the things that I'm writing. And I do think I'm writing, like that I'm writing with the AI that I didn't see.
Mhm.
And then the next week it makes new connections and see it's mir it's
It's
miraculous to compare this to what we could do 5 years ago.
it
It
is. It is. I mean, I
and
wrote an essay on Godelian spaces, that how AI is expanding our Godelian limitations. So the way I feel it, if you look at the language model and the whole mesh, it's more like a jungle, like or a three-dimensional maze. We cannot imagine four-dimensional, but a three-dimensional maze, right? We are very limited to sitting in the room, but AI is giving us these windows, probabilistic windows in those spaces and premises of the literature, of the terminology, vocabulary, of structure, which otherwise the probability of us visiting those spaces was almost zero.
Mhm.
But now there's a stochastic finite possibility that if we interact with it sufficiently enough, we are peeping in those corners which otherwise we would have never seen. Right?
Yeah.
So we are sometimes becoming small, sometimes becoming large, and we are kind of creeping in that whole multidimensional space which does not exist, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of very miraculous, beautiful, and profound to me. And I think I have learned more this year in 2025 about my own field, about I think that it's not just the rate of productivity, the rate of learning has also got an exponential function.
Yeah. I agree. It feels so I would be it would feel like a tragedy to me
Hmm.
how unwilling people are to talk about it. If I didn't think it's about to change, I just don't think that this can continue that long. I
Hmm.
know there are students who are coming up from high school, who are coming up from lower grades, who are acclimated to using this,
Hmm.
and there won't be the same resistance, and then we'll be able to be more open and just experiment. But it does feel right now like a freeze on something that could be so much more than it is. And it's mostly a minority who are doing it underground. That's how it feels.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. The open conversation doesn't hold. Although our university is doing a lot, they have given us, institutional access to language models, and we have, an annual conference, and they are involving faculties who are active in the AI space.
Yeah,
So
how is
come,
the training? How is there faculty training there that's open or
so a lot of it comes under the library services.
okay.
Uh, and I think the so far the training has been. I don't think we have a lot of workforce. We have a lady, she's doing a lot of work here regarding it. I think she's very passionate about it, and I think that's so. I think she is more involved, and the library is more involved in at least giving people an introduction to what AI is, how it works, because a lot of faculty and students were either apathetic or did not have the basic understanding. So they make sure that you understand what it is, how not to use it. So there are certain, bridge courses or certain workshops, which are very basic. And then you have a secondary where you give an annual report on how you used it, how it helped you, so
Oh,
that
really?
yeah.
Okay,
So
interesting.
they have a whole compendium of different use cases across the campus, and which is growing. and I think that's what they like to see as well. So that's on a positive front. But within AI use, I think there's a huge disparity as well. I think it's a Pareto principle, or even more skewed Pareto principle. I think 5 to 7% people would be using very, very heavily, depending on their use. The rest might be using it for emails or some small communications. But uh, there's a very huge population, especially because of institutional access. And our campus is very friendly. It's like an urban campus, small campus. So I think it's very agile and it will adapt to the ecosystem very well.
Okay.
What I'm seeing is that I'm also seeing a global divide, not just a political stance. For instance, European universities and people from Europe are showing a lot of resistance. And
Hmm.
I have colleagues in Europe who I regularly talk to. The what people don't understand is that America is a great country to be in when it comes to technology. The kind of openness we have in American culture about technology, about anything new is unprecedented. So AI came, our universities adapted, with open arms, embraced, and gave us accesses, or from our grants. In Europe, there's a lot of resistance to provide open access to talking about ethics and laws and enforcements and whatnot,
Yeah.
disclosures. Uh, and I think they are doing a lot of disservice to the students because we will see this Europe versus America divide in terms of productivity
Hmm.
and uh, and technological,
Yeah.
adoption skyrocket.
What about international students? So I grew up in Nigeria,
Yeah,
uh, and I know at least there's resource constraints, but at least within
yeah.
Africa, India,
So
some,
I think so in India, the Indian society is divided in terms of ideology. The society is not divided because the country as a whole is very hungry, right? It has been under British previous oppression, so it just wants to do things. So, and our politicians in India are, I don't think they understand anything regarding technology, especially AI. So there's no, institutional constraint. And ChatGPT just started a new whole of India free access to certain models.
yeah, yeah.
And right now, the adoption is such high. So the adoption there is not related to ideology, but related to access to a computer.
Oh, okay.
And you will see the kids who have computers, like no matter what. I mean, I know my one of my cousins. She's in class fifth, I guess, fifth standard. She's on chat. I mean, she's doing all her homework using AI, and the school allows it, and every kid is using it. They're all on phone discussing with each other, and on Discord. So the population is very high. So I think in other countries, especially developing nations, it's not the ideology; it is the access to a technology, to a computer.
Yeah,
And the good thing about AI is that whether you have $1,000 laptop or a $200 laptop, you can still access the same model with the same computational capabilities.
yeah,
So I think in that sense as well, it is
yeah.
it is reducing the disparity.
I've been wanting to do more experiments with open source models,
Uh,
but unfortunately, there the hardware is a big factor because you have to be able to run them. And I just have a MacBook, and it doesn't have enough power to run these big models. But
so we have, because I do a lot of computation in my lab. So we have very expensive computers with GPUs, and I'm planning to buy another laptop. uh, I was trying to create these local models for certain tasks, and I computed like what exactly I need. And that hardware piece, just that laptop is like $7,000. So I have to think about the grant and
yeah,
how
yeah.
I can actually find the resources for that.
I've tried to use a computer lab here at Lindenwood to use Olama, so to
Hmm.
do but even there, I think the best model I could run without it slowing down a lot was maybe 12 billion, something like that. So it's not enough for the really big models.
Yeah. But
Uh,
but I think you are at a stage there where now humanities department might also be in a better position to actually have their own hardware. Everyone needs to adapt technology and invest
yeah,
on it right now.
yeah, yeah. But you can use, I mean, you could use Google Colabs to do
Hmm.
interesting things and the cloud. Yeah. So like you said, but do you really need it? I mean, running Claude, running Gemini,
No, those things you don't need it.
yeah,
I mean, unless you want to understand the models or you know train your own models a certain kind of data,
yeah.
uh, unless you want to intervene. I mean, if you want to open your car, you need a garage and you need the tools.
Hmm.
Otherwise, you're fine driving the car and
Yeah,
taking it to the to the dealership. So
yeah, yeah.
that's the thing. So Dan, we have covered a lot of grounds regarding your book. Is there something I'm missing important from your book?
No, I think the most important questions are these questions of disclosure of I mean, we haven't talked very much about actual copyright law.
Yeah,
Uh, but
why
that
not
is
cover it?
relate it really is, I think, functioning with the same ideas, which is
Hmm.
the guidance from the US Copyright Office is still, as long as there's some human contribution,
Hmm.
you can ask or acquire copyright, but you have to disclose.
Hmm.
So at least from our perspective, we really hope that it's not too far in the future that that's revisited, and
Hmm.
disclosure is not the thing that determines whether you can gain copyright. But if it isn't, you can see just copyright itself under
Hmm.
serious threat. I don't know
Yeah.
how, but
I,
that's
I,
probably what's
I
happening.
I feel like writing a sci-fi fiction where there's a gulag, and that gulag is people who used AI, and there's like a whole KGB who just go around and search people's work and find evidence of AI use, and
Yeah,
then goes back to OpenAI or some companies figure out actual evidence, and there's a
yeah,
whole case made against you. You're called in a court and finally sent to gulag, and you have some funny kind of punishments in gulag that you have to do everything by you have to live without technology.
yeah,
So
yeah.
certain number of years, that would be very fun.
I am a little worried when I hear the big labs or the big companies saying that they're working on ways of watermarking, or just that
Yeah,
you will just know in the future whether something was AI or not.
yeah.
To me, this is the wrong path. We need to just work on societal acceptance of who cares and just use it
If
for what.
if they do actually, they'll do a disservice to themselves because the more they do, the more people who can buy, they can buy their own technology and they'll start using smaller models.
Yeah,
And it is not good for the US as well, I feel. Because so people often say that oh, China will win the AI race because they have DeepSeek and there are these models which are free and they're working as fine. And then they show me the benchmarks. And I tell them, these benchmarks and actual usage are two different games. You can have a model which does really good at benchmarks, but when I use it, I really feel it is useless. And I feel that all those lighter models, I don't think there's anything comparable to the latest model of ChatGPT and Claude.
yeah,
Okay. So I think they're wrong about that. And the more the companies, if they try to basically put those watermarks and things, people will move in those directions where they either using, some other models or they're having their own hardware and running local models.
yeah. I'm hoping for a future when we
Yeah.
stop asking. We stop being so concerned about this, a really clear divide between human and
Yeah.
AI, and just accept that we're hybrid.
When this conversation will become irrelevant, what we are having
Yeah,
today.
yeah. That it
That's for
just
sure.
feels more interesting, more exciting to accept that these tools are here and see what we can do next.
Right. What do you think about this AIS law? So I'll give you a little premise. So it has become a buzzword from news media to publications to social media like LinkedIn discourse. And I think what we are ignoring is that every time there's a technology, when paintbrush were available in the market, even the kid can draw a bad painting. And and those kids' picture were in people's offices. People forget when there were offices, cubicles, people would put like these really ugly pictures made by their 5-year-old kids, right? But because it is your kid, it's beautiful, right? It's a kid's first painting, but they were ugly. I mean, from a aesthetic standpoint, right? But we were appreciative of all of that slop. And then when we are able to record music, YouTube is full of slop from the beginning. So as soon as you democratize any technology to create certain things, there's a lot of content which we don't like or which we don't enjoy, right? But it is there. So for me, AI slop is not a concern, and I think eventually people will get bored and it will fade away. Where do you think the AI slop is right now in the discourse, and actually it's a problem in the long run?
There, I think studying the history of taste and the history of art shows that it's totally unpredictable.
Uh-huh.
Because to me, AI slop is an aesthetic judgment. It's that I don't like the quality of the art.
Mhm.
And I don't like the fact that I can tell that this is AI or it has certain traits that what I'm hoping for is again what I was talking about with school, which is that as younger people just use these tools more and more, we start noticing a variety of styles of things that are
Mhm.
used created with AI. And as soon as we have many different styles that emerge that are all AI generated, then we have fashions that come and go and we accept some kind of hybrid of human AI creativity. And we can distinguish between things we like, things we think are poor quality, but it's less an AI versus human distinction and more just different artistic trends.
Mhm.
Also, as soon as we get the first like full length Hollywood movies
Mhm.
that have significant AI content and we see really creative people creating AI,
Yeah.
then I think we accept it as a valid kind of artistic thing.
Uh, and that would be when we will not be able to differentiate, basically, right? Or directly attribute it without somebody telling us.
Or we have artists who are just geniuses
Uh,
but decide to use AI. Right now, most people who are artistic are more against AI. That's
uh,
just the social milieu
mhm.
that we have right now. But as soon as we get the first true artistic geniuses who use AI,
Yeah.
then that wall breaks, I think. But
Yeah.
it hasn't
So,
happened yet.
right.
I think it could happen already. I think they're good enough that if like someone who is really, really, really
Uh,
artistically skilled could already create very interesting things, but the social pressure is too strong, I think, still.
I desire that happens in a day with a declaration, just like, the East Germany, West Germany came together,
Yeah,
But I think it will be more diffused and less interesting. It could have been more interesting, one day proclamation,
yeah.
like a Plaza Accord or something like that.
I think it will happen though. I think we'll just start noticing more and more things that are interesting that we
Mhm.
can't quite tell. And then some artists who openly acknowledge AI use, but it's so interesting we enjoy it anyway. So
Right. Perfect. That was a great conversation. I hope I have covered a lot of grounds and the conversation would be helpful for AI enthusiasts and not so enthusiasts as well. And let's see. And I hope we cover more grounds in future conversation, especially with a lot of work you and Dr. James Hudson are doing at Linwood College. And very surprising uh, when I discovered all the work you're doing. Uh, because there was almost nothing on this discourse before that.
Well, there is on your channel though, so I'm glad that you're looking into it as well.
Yeah, a little bit now, yes. Yeah,
Yeah, thank you so much.
yeah. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.